Happy holidays and welcome to yet another edition of everyone's favorite Lower Merion TV show, Beside the Gavel. I'm your host, Andy Gavrin, Vice President of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. Today I'm here with one of my 14 favorite colleagues, Commissioner Scott Zelov. As the chair of the Finance Committee and the Board of Commissioners, Scott is the perfect person to talk with regarding the budget, which we're in the midst of right now. And frankly, as one of the most knowledgeable people about the business of Lower Merion, Scott's always the perfect person to talk with. Scott, thanks for joining me today.
Andy, great to be with you.
So, I think almost everyone in the township knows you, but for those 15 or 16 Lower Merionites who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you, about your family.
Believe it or not, I'm not from Lower Merion. I grew up in White Marsh Township, another part of Montgomery County. My wife is from here, a proud graduate of Harriton High School. And we moved here shortly after we were married, and we live in Haverford, the Haverford section of Lower Merion, and we have 3 children. We've recently become empty nesters. I highly recommend it.
Lucky.
And my children have, I've got still 2 in college, and 1 is now on his own, and he's out working and doing well. And I attended college. You may have heard of it. I went to Cornell.
I have heard of that school.
And after Cornell, I worked in New York for a while as a banker, a commercial banker, and then I came back to Philadelphia and was working in a manufacturing business and became the chief financial officer, and then rose up to become president of the company.
Gotcha. And many people will think I'm wearing this red jacket because it's around the holidays, but I also went to Cornell, as you know, and let's go Big Red.
Aren't we part of the Cornell caucus?
I think we are.
Yes.
I think we are.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yes. So you've been commissioner for, I believe, 13 years now. Is that right?
Well, you're close. It's actually, I'm in my 17th year.
I missed a term. Sorry
Yes.
about that. So you're the most senior member of our board.
I am.
What made you run for commissioner all those years ago?
So I think that I have a lot of interest in government, in politics. It was also a good time in my career. I mentioned that I ran a business, but we had sold the business, and so I had a young family, and it seemed like something that made sense to me to do, and also it was an open seat. So sometimes commissioners run for open seats, other times they don't. And so I chose to do that. And I succeeded Charlie Bloom, and Charlie was extremely helpful, and he said it's an easy job and it doesn't take any time. And so, of course, he was very wrong on that point, but I still managed to get elected and have continued. I enjoy it so much and have continued since I enjoy serving as a commissioner.
Yeah, so I mean, it's now almost 2 decades later. You're still serving, as you said. You still enjoy it. What drives you? How do you keep that? I mean, you are, if not the most prepared person on the board every week, one of the most prepared people on the board. I'd argue you're probably the most prepared person on the board. How do you keep that drive, excitement for doing this after almost 2 decades?
Well, I don't want to go on TV once a week and be unprepared. So, since our meetings are televised, and so I do remember early on that there was a commissioner who will be unnamed who would arrive at our meeting, and then he would open his envelope and pull out the papers. So I tended to do that, several days before our meetings, and I just enjoy the role of being on the governing body of a great township.
Yeah.
Where we make a difference. People care about what we do. People actually say to me, "Oh, I saw you on TV." And that means people are watching.
Yeah.
They want to know what's going on locally. They know that they can have an impact on what they're doing, what's going on in their local community. It's much harder to have an impact at the state and national level. And we have a great township. We have a great staff in the township.
Yeah.
It's very dedicated to serving our community. We have big issues that we wrestle with, and they're challenging, but we have a board that cares, and a board that does things in a non-political way. We do things in a way to solve problems and get things done and wrestle on issues, but I still enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's funny, one thing you said was, the opportunity for residents to get involved. And, sometimes when I get a call from somebody for the first time, there are some people who are very involved, others who just get involved when something hits them for the first time and it's on their street or whatever it might be, when they call and I answer the phone or respond to an email, they're like shocked. They're like, wait, I just reached out to my government official and he responded, right? It's not some giant organization. We're here in the community and we're neighbors, and our job is really to represent the people. And I think if you talk to anyone in Bryn Mawr or Haverford, they would certainly say you've done a wonderful job doing that.
Well, you're very, very kind to say that, and I do appreciate that. And my view is if I'm going to do it, I'm going to take it seriously and do it right. I'm not going to mail it in. That's just not how I do things.
So what are some of the biggest accomplishments or things you're most proud of during your tenure as commissioner?
When I started out, we went right into a process of developing the Bryn Mawr master plan.
Okay.
And boy, I remember that in the beginning. It's like, wow, how do we do this? But I figured it out. We had a consultant, we had staff support, and a lot of community involvement. And the process worked. We had a community that really wanted to come up with a master plan for the Bryn Mawr business district and the neighborhoods surrounding the business district. That master plan is still the roadmap today.
Yeah.
It had a series of recommendations, many of which we've implemented, some intersection improvements. We put in the Bryn Mawr Village zoning code. That's well in advance of the township-wide zoning code wholesale revision that we just did a few years ago. And the Bryn Mawr zoning code really served as a model for our business districts. And we continue to talk about that, particularly at Bryn Mawr civic meetings and Bryn Mawr Business Association meetings, and how the business district is evolving and improving, and that zoning code has enabled that to happen.
Yeah.
And we still use that plan as our roadmap, and I know that there's an Ardmore master plan process underway, and I'm confident that that'll be successful and become a roadmap for Ardmore well into the future.
Yeah, and I a couple months ago on the show, I talked to Jillian, who is running the show with the Ardmore master plan, and certainly talked about how Bryn Mawr kind of led into our thinking for the Ardmore master plan. And it is so important for those commercial centers within our township to have that master plan, to have the high level thinking and not just reactionary kind of one-off, development by development project, really having that overarching view.
Before you go on to another question, let me finish my answer to the prior question. I have great interest in finance. That's been, my background, what I have a degree in, and I consider another significant accomplishment in my time as a commissioner is the sound process we have for our budgeting and our financial performance. And much of that is due to a staff that our manager thoroughly understands finance. Our chief financial officer is very capable, but setting the tone and asking the right questions and following our process. And of course, not having a tax increase for many years, which, with the current proposed budget, if that passes as is, that would be 12 years in 2023. And continuing to provide high levels of services. Right. There's many reasons we've been able to do that, but that's certainly something I'm proud of as a commissioner.
Yeah, certainly, and that rolls right into our next topic with it, which is the budget, right? So we're actually looking at, depending on when you watch this, if it's early December or late December, we either are hopefully going to pass a budget shortly or have recently passed a budget. And actually it's two budgets, right? We have an operating budget and a CIP, our capital improvement plan. So can you tell us why do we have two budgets?
So an operating budget is the receipts and expenses for the next year, in this case in 2023. And when we approve the budget, that is the method that enables the township manager, who's here every day running the place, to spend money. And that budget he can't exceed the budget. If he does, he has to get approval to do so.
Right.
And that's so that budget is what we use for our running the township day to day. But one of the most important things commissioners do is look at capital improvements. Where do we want to spend money for making improvements in the township? And it's it's because once we approve the operating budget, the township continues to operate. But capital expenditures, one-time big expenditures, have a big impact, take a long time, and we have of course, we're very dependent on staff work. But setting the priorities for capital spending is one of the most important functions of the commissioners.
Yeah, no doubt.
And we have a 6-year capital budget and plan. We budget for next year, and that's a commitment. And then we have a 5-year capital plan. And so that's not a commitment, but it's a window on the future. And once something gets into that capital plan, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
And we do a better job with our capital budget than many other municipalities, and I would say better than many other counties.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're very rigorous and we look well into the future, and we do it we update it every year.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, that we do the budget because we need to do a budget for next year, because we need to focus on where our priorities are. But that plan is something that's pretty unique to us, and especially as rigorous as it is, while it's not a budget, it gives us that window into what's coming next. Right. And especially on the size of some of these projects, having that, where it's not just, what's coming in front of us this year. We know what the next couple of years are going to be with minor adjustments, but we generally know what it is so crucial and allows us to be better planners. So unfortunately, the goons behind the camera are telling me we got to go to break, but after the break, we'll talk a little bit more about our capital improvement plan. So time flies when you're talking budget.
It certainly does. Look forward to it.
Go grab a drink and a snack and come on back for part 2 of my discussion with Commissioner Scott Zelov, talking Lower Merion budget. I told you they'd be back. Welcome back to part 2 of Beside the Gavel. I'm still Andy Gavrin, he's still Scott Zelov, and we're still talking about the township's budget. So let's jump back in. So Scott, we mentioned a little bit about the capital improvement plan before the break. What are some of the big projects we have for 2023?
There's a lot of them, Andy. Yardmore Avenue Community Center, that process is underway in terms of feasibility and planning. The final proposal is expected to come before us next year, and that's a $16 million project that also includes improvements to the public building across the street, which is the Palm, which is a senior center.
Right.
And interestingly enough, we have allocated $9 million of ARP funds to that project. That's the American Rescue Plan one-time funds that we recently received, and that's federal money.
Yeah, and that was really important, because this is a project that's been in the plan for a while, and as you said, it's in the plan. We know we're going to get to it, but we don't know when. Having these funds available really allowed us to push this important project forward.
In 23, it's proposed that we'll spend $1.5 million on milling and paving our roads, the roads we own, not the state roads. We're going to make improvements to our stormwater system, including stream bank restoration, significant amount, over $3 million of township funds in 2023. We have a lot of buildings, libraries, community centers, the township building, the police administration building. We're always making improvements to those. We've got $1 million or so of improvements in those buildings.
Right.
We are making improvements to our parks. And an extension to the Kinwood Heritage Trail. That's in the 2023 budget. I'm just taking a quick look at our list. And we're always making improvements to our roads, whether it's intersections, whether it's signals, whether it's making sidewalks and pedestrian access easier. That's a very big category of spending. Several $1 million. We have a big township, and it's something that people often ask about.
And it's also very challenging. You'd think it would be pretty easy, but we also have quasi-governmental entities, PICO and Aqua, who have pipes, lines, everything under the roads, and they need to get to theirs. They end up tearing up the roads a lot, and we need to coordinate with them. And I know I was getting questions all the time about Montgomery Avenue and why is it not paved and why is it not paved. It's finally paved, but we had to wait till PICO and Aqua, who we don't have control over, to do their work so then we could finally pave it.
And a very innovative approach to milling and paving when all these utility projects are completed is that we work with the utilities because they're only required to mill and pave the disturbed area of a roadway.
Right.
But we want the roadway milled and paved curb to curb. So they make a contribution and funds, and we get the work done curb to curb.
Yeah.
And so it's done correctly, and it's a great outcome.
Yeah, and I think that also brings up another point is that in the CIP, if you look at the budget for 2023, it's over $30 million. That's not all taxpayer money. How does that work?
So we have the way that the CIP lists projects with their total dollar amount, but we get state grants, we get some federal grants. In this year's budget, the 23 budget in the next few years, we'll have significant money from the ARP that I just mentioned.
Right.
That's also a unique basket of federal funds that we'll be able to allocate to some of our capital projects.
Yeah. So, go ahead. Sorry.
So, grant funding is an important part of how we do capital projects. In some cases, we just can't proceed without the grant funds.
Right. No doubt, because these are, like you said, giant projects, and having that is really helpful. So, switching gears from the capital projects to the operating budget, one thing we talk about, and you alluded to it earlier a little bit, that it's the manager's budget, and at some point it becomes the commissioner's budget. What does that mean? How does that work? Walk us through that process.
I'm going to walk through the whole budget cycle. So, and because we don't do things at the last minute, our budget cycle, both operating and capital, is based on an annual cycle. We start with the capital budget workshop in June every year. We review the current plan and we consider adding to the plan. Then over the summer, the staff, led by the manager, and each department head works on the operating budget. So they're working 6 to 12 months in advance.
Yep.
And then in September, we have an operating budget workshop where we go through, we hear from each department head, and with their focus on what new, if anything, would they like to add to the budget, or in some years they want to reorganize their operations and their staffing, particularly if there's been some vacancies in how they deliver services. Continuous improvement, such an important part of any organization doing what it's supposed to do. And so it's because it's not just adding more people to get things done. If they're reorganized and changed so that under good direction, they can perform at a high level without adding to the staffing. And then as the manager will then, in the beginning of November, present a budget. And let me just, for props, this is what our budget looks like.
Nice
it's
small
an inch,
book.
It's an inch thick. You can get your own copy of it in the library. You can go online. It's somewhat easy to navigate online. You can come to a public hearing. You can ask your commissioner. You can go to a civic association meeting. Commissioners know a lot about the budget. It's an extremely detailed budget. You can look up the salary of just about any employee in the township, and you'll see what they're making.
Yeah.
That's how much detail we provide. So the manager prepares the budget with a budget message explaining what he's done, any changes that might be in the budget from prior years, what the tax rate will be, and then from that point on in early November through the middle of or end of December, it becomes the budget of the commissioners. We then discuss it, debate it, hear public comment, and consider amendments, if any, to both the operating budget and the capital budget. And so we have public hearings, and it becomes our budget, and then we're bound by state law that before the end of the fiscal year, we have to pass a budget for the following year. We always manage to do that, and we certainly don't want to, do it on New Year's Eve. And this year we're doing it in the middle of December, and sometimes it takes a while, and sometimes it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. So this year, I'm going to ask you to look in the crystal ball a little bit. Well, first of all, tell me what's different about the 2023 budget? What changes are there from 2022? And then what do you think about, is this going to be an easy process?
Well, I'll take the first question. So we have been reducing our workforce through attrition for many years, and it has always made sense. I referred a moment ago about continuous improvement. This year, the budget has proposed increases in the workforce in the category of public works, so that we can have more reliable refuse and recycling collection. And that has to do with the economic environment and the difficulty in hiring and keeping part-time workers. We are adding in parking enforcement. We're adding a staff person because enforcing parking rules throughout the township has become an important issue. It always has been, but it's sort of risen up in the priority list. And we're also adding an inspector into the building department because we have a build-out township, we have a lot of new development, we have a lot of code and building codes and zoning code provisions that we want to be a little more proactive. We more typically enforce on a complaint basis, but by being proactive, we can provide a higher level of service. So that's a big change in the 2023 budget.
Definitely, and I think one thing when people hear more enforcement officers, or whether it's parking or whether it's inspectors, it's, oh, you're just trying to raise more money, but it's not. It's not at all. Illegal parking creates a lot of problems. We've seen it a lot in Ardmore, where it makes it tough in some of these roads for the ambulance to get by. It makes if people are parking too long in front of businesses, it doesn't allow customers to park near the businesses, and that hurts the businesses. Same with inspections for buildings. The role of the inspectors is to keep our township safe, and we want to make sure we have sufficient staff to do that.
In fact, our approach to fees, whether it's parking fees or fines, is that they cover the cost of enforcement. We're not trying to increase the budget surplus. We're trying to just recover the cost of enforcement.
Yeah. Can I ask you for a prediction on, there's a lot of expense, right? New people, that means a lot more money in the budget. Is this going to come along with a tax increase for taxpayers?
The manager's proposed budget has no tax increase for 2023, and if it passes with no tax increase, it'll be the 12th consecutive year without one in Lower Merion Township. Several things are at play. We always have a management team that performs very well each year on running the township and managing against the budget. We've been the beneficiary of some one-time revenue, whether it's business tax collection, whether it's the sale of real estate, whether it's our health insurance plan, which is really well designed, and we get some return funding on that. The township is very well run, and most importantly, we have a fund balance. People may be familiar with the term rainy day fund. When the township runs a surplus, it goes into a fund, and that fund can fund a deficit budget. The budget for 2023 is a deficit. More is going to go out than comes in, but the fund balance will fund the deficit. And so I think we're in a good position to be able to approve the budget as proposed. I expect there will be some amendments to it, but it makes sense to approve it as proposed as we go into 2023.
Yeah, well, thank you, Scott. I finally feel like I know what I'm talking about with the budget, so I appreciate all the education for me. Hopefully by now I know what I'm talking about, but I think it is really helpful for the residents to understand what that budget process looks like, because it really is one of, if not the most important thing that we do as we're setting policy, sitting on the Board of Commissioners.
It's right at the top of our list.
Yeah.
And you and I were co-chairs of the Finance Committee a year ago. We worked so well together. And you've as with our new president, Sinai, and you and he are working so well together, you decided that I could handle the Finance Committee on my own, so I'm thoroughly enjoying that. So.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of back and forth on whether we thought you could do it. But,
I lucked out.
Turns out we were right and you could. Apparently, my friends, we're out of time. Thanks for joining Scott and I once again for Beside the Gavel. And Scott, thanks for sharing your thoughts, and let's go Red.
Andy, it's a big weekend for Cornell soccer. Let's go Red indeed.